Hi, this is Danielle again with another calculus problem for you. In this problem, we're going to practice using indefinite and definite integrals. So first here we are given the acceleration function t plus 4. We can see that this is acceleration. Here we have a of t that usually does imply acceleration, but also we're given here this unit value. Since we do see the second squared here, that does confirm that we indeed have the acceleration function here. We were also given this value of the velocity at 0 is equal to 5. So our first part of our problem here is asking find the velocity at time t. So here we practice using our indefinite integral. And that's going to be t plus 4 dt. And so that basically is just telling us that we need to take the antiderivative. So then we're going to be adding 1 to our exponent, so we'll have t squared. And then you would multiply by the reciprocal, or you can simply here divide by that same number. So I have t squared divided by 2. Our 4 is going to gain a t. And then we also need to go ahead and add on our constant. And then here's where we can go ahead and use that velocity value we were given. And we can plug in our 5 for c here, since we do see that's when the velocity is 0. So then our velocity function is going to end up being t squared over 2, which could also be written as 1/2 t squared plus 4t plus 5. And that gives us our velocity function. And then just to note here, this is now going to be in units of meters per second. And our next part of our problem here is asking us to find the distance traveled. So here we're going to be solving for the definite integral from 0 to 10. And this time we'll be solving for our distance. So we're going to be using this velocity function that we found. And when we're solving for the total distance, we want to make sure that we are solving considering the absolute value of this function. In this case here, we don't really need to look for any areas that might be negative of this function, which we normally would. And that's because you may be able to just see this, but if we were to take any of these values here between 0 and 10, those are all going to be positive values. And in this function, just the nature of this function here, any of those values that we stuck into here, those are going to end up being positive. We just have, let's say we put a 10 here, 10 squared divided by 2, 10t plus 5, those are all going to be positive values. The only way we would get a negative, even at 0, with all of this zeroed out, we'll still have the positive 5 here. So we don't really need to worry about areas of this particular function that would be negative. So we can just go ahead and solve over this interval from 0 to 10 without splitting this function up for absolute value. So then we'll have another antiderivative. And at this point, you can go ahead and use your calculator. You also could hand by hand plug in these values and solve. So you would be taking the value at 10 plugged in and then subtracting the value of 0 plugged in. On your calculator, you can simply put this function in, and then from your home screen, you would plug in y1 at 10 minus y1 at 0, and you should result with a value of 416.67 meters. And that would be your total distance traveled.